Hello, Christian. I appreciate to visit in our studio. Welcome to Perm. The main theme of the conference is mine water, technological and ecological challenges. What are these challenges? What the problems has got this industry?
Yeah, well, it's more or less three challenges. One is that usually we have a lot of mine water. That means we have a large volume, and usually it's highly contaminated. That means we have a lot of problematic substances in the water that have to be removed. And the third challenge is, that's the ecological one. If we are not treating the mine water, if we are not cleaning the mine water, then we could have severe environmental problems.
And why we should, or maybe we must, solve those problems? I don't know, could these effects of mine waters have a long-lasting influence?
Yes, it can. For example, when we are just letting that mine water flow into the underground, then it can contaminate our groundwater, which we are using for drinking water, and then we would not have a good drinking water quality, and that's, I think, what we want. So therefore, we must make sure that we are properly dealing with that contaminated water.
The main questions for countries, not of course for Russia, for South Africa, of course, how to slow down. I don't know, this effects of mine works, mine industry. What practices are we using today?
Yeah, well, today we are usually treating the water that is flowing out of the mine. So whatever comes out of the mine, we treat it. The future will be that we already know in advance what type of water will come out, and we will start to somehow contain the contaminated water underground, so that the really contaminated water will stay in the mine, and the water that is less contaminated will flow out of the mine, and that's what we will then treat. That will be the future. 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah.
And do you plan find new ideas or new technologies on this conference?
Yes, absolutely. The International Mine Water Association was founded 40 years ago. So 4 decades ago. And the idea of our founding fathers was to exchange knowledge between the East and the West. Not from the West to the East, into both directions. And it's the first time ever that we are in Russia, and one of the founding fathers was Russian. So I'm very glad that we are here, and we can now learn from our Russian colleagues what is done in Russia, and we can then use the technology and implement it as well. Because usually we have that language barrier. Papers are published in Russian, papers are published in English, but here we have the first time the opportunity to speak with each other face to face and discuss problems and get new ideas.
Of course, it's important. And I mean, could you give an example about new ideas, what they will be?
Yes.
Some models, maybe applications, new tools?
Absolutely. This morning I heard a presentation from a lady speaking about the salt mines here in the Ural area.
Yes.
And she used 2D and 3D modeling to model how that salt water flows through the Kama River. That was interesting. Then somebody gave a presentation about electrochemical methods. So one of the first electrochemical water treatment plants was constructed by Russian people in the Donbass area, which is now the Ukraine. And that's a fascinating technology, and I'm quite sure that this technology will be the future. And I was very glad to hear this morning that Russia is still working on that technology.
It will be useful on all of the world.
Yes, exactly. There's currently only 1 or 2 mines in the world that are using that technology as well. One is here in Russia, the other one is in South Africa, but it's not working yet as it should work. So it's very important that we exchange those ideas and the experience that the Russian colleagues have already.
I was in a conference and I wrote one thought. One of the scientists in our Perm State University said that there is a new trend using natural technologies or natural berries. What do you think about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a fan, if we can say. I'm a fan of that technology, absolutely. It cannot be used everywhere. So when the contamination of the water is very high, then we need to use old technology, which is not really old, let's say conventional technology. But once the contamination of the water goes down, then we can use that new technologies or alternative technologies, natural technologies, like, for example, constructed wetlands, for example, limestone drains, just to use some simple terms. There are more complicated ones as well. One is called RAPS. I like that word. It means reducing and alkalinity producing system. Which means that you can then remove sulfate from the water, you can remove iron from the water. Of course, it's not a technology where a company cannot make a lot of money other than the electrochemical methods, but it's a niche area for companies that want to develop into new technologies.
It's useful also in Russia, in our Perm region, yeah?
I think so, yeah. So what I heard so far, there are some areas where it can be used, not where the mine water is highly contaminated, but let's say there are some old mines, and mining here is a couple of centuries old already, and there is still some water flowing out, and there is no one who would pay for an active water treatment plant. Then you install one of those passive systems, as we call it.
Do you heard about our problems in Perm region, in Kizil, for example?
Oh yes, yes. I heard about it a couple of weeks ago when I prepared for the conference. I also saw some photographs yesterday, and it immediately reminded me of Cape Breton Island in Canada, where I stayed for 3 years. So I worked at Cape Breton University, and I dealt with these problems. I saw these problems. They are spending a lot of money there, tens of millions of Canadian dollars to solve the problem. And what I saw is it can be solved. That's the key message. Of course, with a lot of money.
Of course, it's a huge sum.
It's, yeah. But coming back to your previous question, if we know that something like that will happen in the future, then we can start very early in the design of a mine to prevent that. So currently there's a mine in Finland that will be developed, and they are now thinking already at the beginning what to do when the mine is closed. But now we have to deal with a problem here, like on Cape Breton Island, and I'm absolutely sure we can do that. With we, I mean the mine water community, and also the Russian colleagues with the technology that I saw in the last 2 days.
If we will have $10 million.
Yes.
Okay. Back to our conference. Do you plan to look some new ideas, for example, from students maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, my student presented a new idea today, how we shall use technologies that we are currently using in our mobile phone, that we are using in our cars, where all the devices, even the cars, are communicating with each other. We shall use that technology in the future, where all the devices, all the measurement instruments in a mine water treatment plant, in a mine, are communicating with each other. That means today, when we have a water treatment plant, the plant reacts immediately when the water quality changes. In the future, we can predict a week, 2 weeks before what will be the water quality. So then the mine operator knows I have to buy this much lime, that much lime, or I have to start the pumps, I can stop the pumps. That was one technology. And the other one that I saw also today, that was, again, electrocoagulation. Meanwhile, a lot of people are working on those electrochemical methods, and it has a big potential. There is money that can be made, and that money can then spend for remediation projects. So I saw a couple of new ideas and new technologies, but we are on the first day of the conference only.
Could you tell about a little bit more about the role of prediction?
Yeah. I already indicated it. Prediction is really getting more and more important. Prediction means that we start as early as possible during the lifetime of a mine to predict what will be the water quality. But it also means when we already have an operating mine that we predict on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, like the weather report, what will be the water quality, what will be the flows in the future. And I saw a very nice model this morning in one of the keynote speeches where it was already used for predicting the water quality along the Kama River. That was really interesting.
Okay. To tell about this conference in Perm, what do you plan to see in the end of the conference? It will be some roadmap, maybe some plans, maybe some international science groups with Russian scientists, with Perm scientists.
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke already today about a small project between Brazil, South Africa and Russia, possibly some other countries. So people are really interested because we can see what is done here in Russia and we can speak to these people face to face, and that makes it much easier. Yes, I can see that. Not a roadmap yet. As I said, it's too early in the conference, yes. But the key thing is that we are speaking with each other. Speaking with each other, that solves problems.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.